Hello people, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Here's why Ripple's RLUSD strategy holds enormous potential for XRP. Okay guys, let's get into it. Okay, so this is something that I've seen come up a few times now, and each time it has come up I have actually addressed it before, because a lot of people do worry that, Ripple's ultimate goal now is to ditch XRP for RLUSD, which I think couldn't be further from the truth in my opinion, and I've explained why, but we've had a few new things that's happened, so I thought I'd just do an update in regards to this. And so we've got someone here, Teor, who's actually been talking about this and gave a few reasons as to why, RLUSD success and the things that's happening now around RLUSD could be huge for XRP's potential as well, which I completely agree with. And I'll say this now. Teor is like an influencer who I really respect. She's an honest content creator. She doesn't do hype or clickbait stuff. So, for me, she's someone who I definitely recommend. And I agree with what she's saying here. So I'm just going to give my thoughts on this. So before we go any further, just a quick update on top of this I wanted to cover as well. Ripple partners with oldest US bank for RLUSD custody. Absolutely incredible stuff here. This is with BNY Mellon. Really amazing stuff to see. And I have to say, you can just see how once the pathway was clear, once we had a pro crypto party and president in place, you can see that Ripple knew what they wanted to do. Everything was here ready for them, but they just needed the right party in place for them to be able to do these things. And now they have got a pro crypto president and party in place. They're really, they're putting this plan into action and they're going full force with it. And it's great to see. Okay, so let's get into it then. So what's the first way that this can help with RLUSD being successful to unlock XRP's potential? Okay, so one of the first things that Ari is talking about here is rivaling Ethereum. And what she means with that is in regards to, RLUSD at the moment, it's not just on XRP, right? It's not just on the XRP ledger. It's also on the Ethereum mainnet as well. And so you've got to understand, obviously, the money that they get from, RLUSD being on Ethereum, it's good for Ripple, but it's no good for XRP because it's not on the XRP ledger. So it doesn't benefit the XRP ledger in any way, shape or form. And so the reason why they put, RLUSD also on the Ethereum mainnet is just because they've got to look at this from a business perspective, right? Ethereum is the second biggest cryptocurrency. It's got a huge user base. They're expanding their chance for RLUSD to succeed. This is what I was saying to you before. What you got to understand with stablecoins, right? If you think about, how you want a stablecoin to be successful. So for example, let's just say they want, the digital dollar, the digital pound, the digital yen, etc., right? They're going to want these stablecoins to be on as many networks as possible, because they're not going to want it to be a thing of, you can only use this stablecoin on this network because it's limiting its reach. So obviously they're going to want it to be as widely available as possible. And so, Ripple decided to put RLUSD on Ethereum as well. I don't blame them for this. I know a lot of people who look at it as ETHgate and stuff like that. I think what you've got to understand is Ethereum itself is just a decentralized network. You can hate some of the creators and stuff like that, but it's just a decentralized platform. And at the end of the day, from a business strategy for Ripple, it does make sense. It does. At the end of the day, they want it to get as much available usage as possible. And to do that, you put it on the second biggest network as well. I completely understand it from a business perspective. But what they're saying now is that, Ripple obviously looking to implement smart contracts onto the XRP ledger. And so if they do that, it now would mean that a lot of the RLUSD that's being used on Ethereum will probably be used on the XRP ledger. Why? Well, one, it's a lot cheaper to do smart contracts on the XRP ledger. And two, it's a lot faster as well, right? So you've actually got a faster and cheaper alternative. You don't have the fees fluctuating on XRP, nowhere near to the extent that you would the Ethereum network, because it's so cheap to do it. So you're not really going to see a real, meaningful difference in price fluctuations. It doesn't get congested like the Ethereum network, and it's a lot faster. So what this means is that people would rather obviously use XRP. It's just a better alternative, right? So if obviously XRP does get this smart contract stuff enabled, then they've got a rival there, right? They've got a rival, and you're talking about the third biggest cryptocurrency out there which was once neck and neck with Ethereum and at one point was beating Ethereum. So it's that thing of, well, why would you choose the Ethereum RLUSD when you can use the cheaper and faster version in XRP? And what does that mean? Well, it means more usage on the XRP ledger, right? And the other thing is again, like I've said before, when you've started to use the XRP ledger, you can start to look at using it in different ways, right? You might not just be RLUSD that you start to look for it in terms of how you use it. Okay, so that's one way in terms of how that can boost adoption for XRP. The second we've got is the banking license that Ripple have applied for. This is another thing that, like, again, it can't be underestimated. This is absolutely massive. And if this gets approved, which I think it will, I think we're at that point now where crypto is clearly looking to be adopted by, you know, governments, institutions, etc., etc. Like we're changing now onto a new path. I really do think, you know, the likelihood is that this will be accepted and approved. Well, okay, what that means now is Ripple have got they've got the prestige of basically like a bank, right? And then the way I want to add that in is obviously Ripple partnering with BNY Mellon. So this is a huge bank, one of the oldest banks in America. So these guys are like custodians already for like huge amounts of assets, like, you know, literally, you know, millions, billions of dollars in assets and stuff like that. Like they're a huge custodian. Well, what this adds to is, again, like Ripple being the first, let's say, licensed and, you know, legally compliant stablecoin, right? And company, they're going to be held to a much bigger standard. Like if you think about the crypto scene right now, one of the biggest issues that we've had in terms of not having regulations is, you know, rug pulls. Right? You know, when you're in a crypto and they've made this crypto and you're getting it and then they just pull the liquidity out. Like that's been a huge problem. These are the kind of things where, you know, with Ripple being held to like regulatory scrutiny and having to be like checked by, you know, governments and things like that to make sure that they get approved, it's a whole different standard. It's a whole different bar. And this is why I do think eventually, RLUSD could become the top stablecoin out there because of the way that they're going to be compliant. Like they're going to policymakers, they're going to the governments. Like Ripple, you know, was at the US Senate and Brad Garlinghouse was speaking at the US Senate. Like they're working within the law. They're working with all the right people to be as compliant as possible. They're trying to do this in the right way. And so, you know, one of the biggest things I've told you guys before in the past is the issue with Teor, right? Teor USDT. And there's been a bit of a question mark over Teor, right? And I'm not going to get too deep into it for this video. I've discussed it before, but the question is with Teor is Teor really backed? There's been numerous times where they've been asked to do a proof of their reserves to show backing of what they have to back the stablecoin, because you should be backing it dollar to dollar, right? But they've never done this. Like they've had times where they've said they've been going through the process and then they've sacked the company who was doing the audit. So we still don't know if Teor is truly backed. Well, if you've got Ripple here who are partnering with like one of the oldest banks to do, you know, the custody of the Ripple stablecoin, the proof of the reserves are going to be, you know, managed by the bank. They will be maintaining it, the custodian, to make sure that, you know, the peg stays truly pegged. Teor have not shown things like that. Like with Teor, there's been, you know, this whole talk of like, it's a house of cards, that eventually will come out that, you know, it's not backed at all and it will just crumble. Now, I don't know if that will happen. And I have said before, like the impact that that will have on the market could be catastrophic. Now, if we get further enough along, it could be a point where it won't be as bad because crypto have been adopted on a bigger scale. But at this point right now, with how big Teor is, like Teor is the number one stablecoin bar none. And they are huge. So if it was to happen now, please believe it would have a huge impact on the market. But obviously nothing as of yet has come out. But yeah, like this is where I say, like, who are you going to go with? If you're thinking about a stablecoin, right? And you want to know that it's got trust and, you know, it's reliable, it's never going to lose its peg. Would you not go with RLUSD knowing that it's being backed by like one of the oldest American banks out there? and you know that Ripple have got their own banking license, and you know they've got these partnerships, and like it just makes sense. So I do think over time RLUSD, especially with these things now in place, could easily become the top stablecoin. I think that's a very real possibility. And look, I don't want to get too speculative here because I really don't know, but it's possible that RLUSD could be like the digital dollar. It could, because it's already got all the things compliance-wise for it to stand up to that, you know, that level of scrutiny. Now, I'm not saying it will happen. I don't know, but I'm just saying it's possible. It's absolutely possible because they're doing everything in the right way. So all this means adoption ultimately for the XRP ledger. And this is where I say it comes to XRP. Okay. So you got to understand now, this is where Ripple becomes a huge company in the eyes of institutions, governments, banks, etc. Because they're there now. Like Ripple, okay, maybe they might not have been taken as seriously before because it was that blockchain company, it's that crypto company, and crypto wasn't really being looked at seriously. But everybody knows now crypto is the future. Like there's no denying that at this point. We can all see what's happening. And so Ripple is the biggest company out there when it comes to blockchain. And this is why it's getting the partnerships where it's merging with banks and things like that. Like you can see it coming and unfolding. And so what will happen is Ripple obviously saying, yes, we use XRP. They have that prestige. And so banks, institutions who are not as used to crypto now want to get involved. And if Ripple are saying, yeah, we use XRP, I think they'll listen to that. I think, yeah, this RLUSD they have, it's backed by banks and stuff like that, and the government are backing them, and okay, that sounds good. And what's the other thing they use for cross-border payments? XRP. Oh, okay, cool, that sounds good. Then let's give that a go. More people will be intrigued. It will just have lots more credibility because of the position Ripple are in. So this could be massive for the adoption of XRP. This could be that now more banks do want to use XRP for cross-border payments. It might not just be RLUSD, because while RLUSD is cool in terms of if you're in America, if you're talking cross-border payments, obviously the better choice is XRP, because XRP is the bridge currency. So it's cool in America, just doing like US to US payments because you haven't got to change the currency. But if you want to do, US dollars to pounds to GBP, that's a whole different thing. You're going to want XRP because that will automatically just transfer it into the currency for you in seconds. That's clearly the better option. So as Ripple gets more recognized, they show you their services that they provide. It becomes bigger. They start seeing, oh yeah, look, XRP is what they use. This is how good it is. More banks want to get involved. I think this is massive. So yeah, I completely agree with Eri here. Like this could be huge for XRP. So we will see, but yeah, for everybody who's worrying that RLUSD is getting more of the shine and it's going to just overtake XRP, I actually just think RLUSD complements XRP. I actually think it unlocks more opportunities for XRP as well. And as I say, Ripple are not going to give up on XRP. That just, to me, that would literally make no sense whatsoever. It would be pointless for them to do that. If anything, it could really hurt their business because a lot of their money is in the escrow. So a lot of their business is around that escrow. So it just wouldn't make sense for them to ditch XRP. So for me, guys, once again, as I've told you before, this is not a problem. I think if anything, this is a huge opportunity, but a lot of things are happening now and Ripple are getting a lot more shine. So if you ask me, this is XRP's time. RLUSD and XRP will complement each other. That's what it is. All the Ripple are doing right now is just not putting all their eggs in one basket, which as a business, that's what you do. You look at multiple ways to earn money. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So for me, I'm excited to see what this can bring, but I thought I'd clear this up again just so you can see the real actual potential opportunities from this and not just looking at it as a negative of RLUSD being picked over XRP. Hope this helps. Thank you very much for watching this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell. Take care.